So this is the second video in the chapter Measurement and Experimentation, and in this video we will be learning some basic concepts of the simple pendulum. So in its most simplest form, the simple pendulum consists of a metal bob suspended with the help of a string. The point at which it is suspended is called the point of suspension, and the distance from the point of suspension to the bob's center of gravity is called the effective length of the pendulum. Now, in this situation, the pendulum is at rest, and that is because it is under the influence of two equal and opposite forces. One is the force of gravity downward, and the other is the force of tension upward. So this position of rest of the pendulum is called its mean position. Now, to make the pendulum oscillate, we must pull it to another position x. And from there, if we release the pendulum, it will start swinging, and it will swing between the points x and y. So as you can see, the pendulum bob is swinging about the mean position m. Such a periodic motion of a body in which it swings or it oscillates about a mean position is called oscillatory motion or simple harmonic motion. Now, the mean position is m and x and y are the extreme positions, which means that the maximum displacement of the bob is from m to x or m to y. So this distance is called the amplitude of the simple pendulum. And one full cycle of motion of the pendulum from the point x to the point y and back to x is called an oscillation. So an oscillation could be from x to x or from y to y, or it could be from m to y and then x and then back to m. Now, the amount of time that the pendulum bob takes to complete one full oscillation is called its time period. So in this case, the time period would be the amount of time that the bob takes to go from x to y and back to x. And the number of oscillations that the pendulum completes in 1 second, it's called the frequency of the pendulum. So what is the relationship between time period and frequency? Let's look at two quantities. One is time and second is the number of oscillations. So we know that time period is the amount of time that the pendulum takes to complete one oscillation. So that means if the amount of time is t, the pendulum will complete one oscillation in that much amount of time. The question is, if the time is 1 second, how many oscillations will the pendulum be able to complete? So when we do the cross multiplication, we find that the number of oscillations that the pendulum is able to complete in 1 second is equal to 1 multiplied by 1 divided by t. And the number of oscillations in 1 second is also called the frequency of the pendulum, which means that the frequency of the pendulum f is equal to 1 by t. Now, let's look at this relationship in action. So let's look at this problem. The time period of a simple pendulum is 0.25 seconds. What is its frequency? So when we apply the formula f equals to 1 by t and replace the values, we find that the frequency is equal to 4 Hertz. Now, the SI unit of frequency is Hertz. Now let's look at another problem. This time, we need to find the time period when the frequency is given. The frequency of a simple pendulum is 20 Hertz. What is its time period? So then, when we apply the formula and replace the values, we find that the time period is equal to 0.05 seconds. Now let's look at one interesting case. The frequency of a simple pendulum is 0.5 Hz. what is its time period? Now when we apply the formula and replace the values, we find that the time period is equal to 2 seconds. Now this is very interesting, and the reason is that if we have this pendulum and we allow it to swing between the positions x and y, the time period of 2 seconds means that the pendulum takes 2 seconds to go from x to y and then return back to x, which means that the time taken for the pendulum to go from the extreme position x to another extreme position y is equal to 1 second. Now such a pendulum whose time period is equal to 2 seconds is called the seconds pendulum. And now the summary of this video. The motion of a body about a mean position is called oscillatory motion or simple harmonic motion. The maximum displacement from the mean position is called amplitude. The time taken to complete one oscillation is called time period. The number of oscillations in 1 second is called the frequency of the pendulum. And a seconds pendulum is one in which the time period is equal to 2 seconds. So that's all in this video. In the next video, we will be looking at the time period of a simple pendulum.